Following the order of service. Good morning. My name is AJ Fox. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the Director of Religious Education here at First UU. I'm a ginger, redheaded person with a pretty intense undercut and some cicada tattoos. I'm wearing black and Doc Martens. Anyway, here we are. We are Unitarian Universalists and adjacent community. And the 4th of July is in 2 days, and it's always a little tricky in this faith space. Our community holds the complexity of both being usually skeptical of any war where oil is involved, in favor of a measured recognition that regional borders are a pretty sketch way of determining human rights, and yet simultaneously, our faith was essentially born and reborn over the anti-fascist and pro-democracy struggles of the middle of the last century. Democracy lies at the heart of our faith. From the original fifth principle, which upholds the right of conscience and the use of democratic process, to the revised language of Article 2, justice, which states, we support the use of inclusive democratic processes to make decisions. Unitarian Universalism embodies a deep commitment to inclusion of all voices and empowering all of us to have a say in the matters that impact us. Within our faith community, we recognize the profound importance of our interconnectedness and the transformative power of inclusive decision-making. And so it is in that context that we gather this 4th of July weekend in a year where the legislative attacks against marginalized people in our country is truly tsunami level. I personally cannot keep track of all the laws being passed. The ACLU currently lists 24 bills that have been passed into law directly targeting children and youth in educational settings, anti-trans, anti-LGBTQIA plus inclusion, but is tracking more than 124 currently advancing in various state legislators. And of the bills, I'm only going to be talking today about the ones that are already law. So from this point forward, we're talking about things that have been passed. We're not talking about what might be, okay? Now they're all being appealed because they should be, but here we are. They're law. Mostly, I'm doing that because the maybes of the proposed legislation kind of make me feel dizzy and nauseous. So we're gonna stick with what is because that's, yeah. Some of these are about the most basic binary sex laws. The Oklahoma Senate Bill 26 mandates that locker rooms are only accessible based on binary sexual identification, quote, determined by genetics and physiology as stated on an individual's original birth certificate. Like that's never wrong. We're not even talking gender identity, like intersex people don't exist. Idaho Senate Bill 1100 imposes binary limitations on locker rooms usage. Iowa Senate File 482 specifies that even single-stall restrooms must be labeled on a binary sex basis and used strictly according to binary biological sex. That's in schools. These laws are dangerous and transphobic, and they put trans kids at risk and in harm's way. But there's a second set of these laws that are more insidious. In recent years, there's been a significant increase in what's been coined as educational gag orders. These laws are characterized by their broad scope and impose restrictions on teachers regarding the discussion of topics such as gender identity and sexual orientation, sexual reproduction and related manners within the educational setting. They're aimed at schools and libraries and designed to directly disempower teachers from being sources of education, sources of safety. Now here's the caveat, right? I am not a legal expert. As I was looking up these laws, I kept feeling way out of my depth and confused by the broadness and the fuzziness of these laws. And I kept having to center myself. I kept wanting to email my lawyer buddies and be like, what's this mean? But that's the point. The lack of legal expertise is not confined to just myself. Teachers and school administrators tasked with navigating these laws find themselves in a similar place. They don't know what they can do under broad laws that ban, in some cases with criminal charges for teachers in violation, entire topics from the classroom. These laws are not merely legislative measures. They are using the legal system as a Russian roulette of terrorism against an entire set of thoughts and ideas. And before we get freaked out about me using the word terrorism to describe these laws, terrorism as a concept transcends individual acts of violence. It in essence means that we have took fear or sowed seeds of doubt within a society. That's the motivation behind these laws. By intentionally crafting them in this ambiguous manner, proponents ensure that educators and administrators remain apprehensive and hesitant to broach critical subjects in the classroom. The vagueness of these laws creates a climate of uncertainty, leaving educators and administrators unsure how to interpret and comply with their provisions. These legislative initiatives are typically framed as protective measures for children, purported to restore decision-making powers to parents. At first glance, these intentions may seem commendable. I actually really believe in parental rights in these conversations, right? But it's a facade. Parents are absolutely the primary sexuality and morality educators for their children. However, the average parent's educational training on topics like gender identity and sexual orientation is sometimes lacking. And even parents who very much want to create inclusive and welcoming family cultures aren't prepared to do it alone. But they also live in a culture where the vast majority of children's education takes place within the school system. So by eliminating any conversation around gender and gender identity and sexual orientation from the curriculum, we are depriving children and youth of the daily exposure to these fundamental aspects of human experience, denying them the important touchstones for growth and self-understanding. And not every family is safe. Gay and transgender minors often find themselves psychologically captive within unsupportive family environments. Schools and libraries have been active sanctuaries for so many youth. And these laws are actively being created to undermine the safe spaces that have been life-saving for so many marginalized students. We will continue moving past the era where each gay person had to grow up feeling like they were the only gay person, feeling like an anomaly without representation or visible community. Visibility matters because it tells us that we are not alone. This is arguably more pronounced and important when it comes to gender identity, as the language surrounding it opens up entire worlds of experience and self-recognition. Children growing up in a world that embraces representation, where different gender identities and sexual orientations are acknowledged and named, are equipped with the vocabulary to describe themselves from an early age, fostering internalized understanding and acceptance. All right, so this is where we get to here's the scary stuff. Let's start in Arkansas. Senate Bill 294 states that before grade 5, public school teachers are prohibited from providing classroom instruction on sexually explicit materials, sexual reproduction, sexual intercourse, gender identity, sexual orientation. Okay, but the law literally says sexual reproduction. must not be mentioned in Arkansas before 5th grade now, maybe through 5th grade. Not human sexual reproduction, sexual reproduction, as in the thing that's not asexual reproduction, as in like the way that life replicates, as in genetic material from two creatures creating a new creature. A 4th grade teacher in Arkansas can discuss jellyfish and succulent budding reproduction, but the law is unclear if they can now talk about, Mendel's peas and all of that stuff. This morning, this is off script a tiny bit, sorry Vonnegut. This morning Vonnegut was like, what's inside a cell? Like, we've talked about cells and we talked about the little things, but like, what's the gooey stuff?
Cytoplasm.
It is cytoplasm. That is exactly right. And we watched a couple of YouTube videos while I was getting ready this morning, just random ones about like cytoplasm and stuff. And I couldn't have watched those videos with a 3rd grade classroom, because part of discussing that stuff is discussing sexual reproduction. Now, you probably could, but that's the point. It's illegal in the laws. That's the point. And it doesn't say if you can talk about, that you can't talk about non-binary or transgender identity. It says gender identity. But all gender is gender identity. Every person in this room has an experience of gender. Gender identity isn't just about trans folks or non-binary folks. Would a teacher in Arkansas think twice about reading a book like Pink is for Boys? I would if I was that teacher. Would a teacher in Arkansas think twice about reading a book about baby animals that has a word like birth or laid an egg? Honestly, I might right now, especially if I was a teacher that already was at a marginalized identity and more likely to be followed up with stuff like this. These laws not only hinder educators' ability to include and create comprehensive education, but also perpetrate the erasure of diverse identities and narratives within the educational system. Let's stick with Arkansas for one more minute. House Bill 1468 has passed, significantly increasing the difficulty for children and youth to request that their chosen names and pronouns be honored in public schools. It says, a faculty member, teacher, or other employee of a school, regardless of the scope of his or her official duties, shall not address an unemancipated minor or student with a pronoun or title that is inconsistent with the unemancipated minor or student's biological sex, unless the faculty member, teacher, or other employee of the school has written permission from the unemancipated minor or student's parent or guardian. Everybody that's worked with youth in the last decade looks really pale in the face right now, right? Like everybody out here who's like worked with kids right now is like, oh buddy. The 7th grader who comes in and shyly asks if the favorite art teacher can use they, them pronouns. The teacher has to now say no, and then continually actively misgender that use, or do the dance of only using their name but not preferred name, or just their government name but no longer pronouns, unless the parent has been notified and gives written permission. If the parents don't give permission, the youth is out of luck. North Dakota, House Bill 1522, North Dakota now. It's not just Arkansas problem. Clarifies that no school district can require teachers to use a transgender child's preferred pronouns. Moreover, it explicitly states that schools cannot withhold or conceal information about a student's transgender status from their parent or legal guardian. Let's pause there. Who in this room is a mandated reporter? Okay, so we know what it is to have a responsibility under the law to report if a child is in a risky situation. Teachers in North Dakota are now mandated by law to report to the parent if a child has transgender status, whatever that means. As a teacher in North Dakota, under these circumstances, the fear of being in violation of the law by not immediately reporting a student who comes out to me would honestly be kind of paralyzing. This situation could pose life-threatening or safety-threatening consequences for vulnerable children. In such an environment, The very notion of being a safe space for transgender students becomes compromised. And teachers are already taking down their safe space signs and avoiding the conversations as a result. In my work with adolescent youth, I have always explained that I am a mandated reporter and given them the very short version of what that means. I feel like this is part of the process of giving them autonomy and awareness if they bring me the big stuff. Sometimes they can bring you the big stuff as a cry for help, and I respect that. But I always clarify what is safety and that the rest is confidential, that I'm a trusted adult, and that mandated reporter laws are there to protect them. I have no idea how I would handle being a trusted adult if I was a teacher in North Dakota. But this is the vagueness, right? This is the vagueness and the way it's being weaponized. If a 15-year-old comes to you and tells you they're trans, you have to report it to the parents in North Dakota, even if the youth tells you that their parents are not safe. But what if you have a 12-year-old doodling gay pride, trans pride logos on their notebook? That happens. Do you report that? What if the 7-year-old says they want to have a pink prize box toy? What if the kindergartner comes in and tells you that he hates being a boy? Or that he just doesn't really know what being a boy means? What does it even mean? The result of these laws is to lock down and silence discussion of gender and create situations where children are forced to be in the closet in all aspects of their lives. For many trans youth, the gender euphoria that they can eke out in safe classrooms is literally life-sustaining, and these laws remove that. In Iowa Senate File 496, it states that each school district must promptly notify the parent or guardian if any employee reasonably believes that a minor child has expressed a gender identity different from the biological sex listed on their official birth certificate. Same problem. And gender identity and sex are different things. Every child expresses gender identity that is different from their biological sex because gender expression and gender euphoria are as personal as a fingerprint. Also, biological sex is not binary. That's biology. We could YouTube it like we did cells this morning. Teachers operating under these laws are silenced. Utah Senate Bill 100 mandates parental consent is required to change any information on a child's school record regarding their gender identity, specifying the changes must conform to the student's sex. All right. I would be concerned that even making a note of a child's preferred pronouns or using their chosen name without written parental consent is in violation. These examples demonstrate a concerning trend of legislative measures that limit the understanding and acceptance of gender diversity. The laws not only hinder teachers' ability to provide inclusive environments, but also perpetuate a culture that disregards the nuanced nature of gender identity. It's crucial that we critically examine these limitations and advocate for educational landscapes that are inclusive. I'm almost done. I'm not almost done with all the laws, right? These are just ones I picked to share today. Montana, Senate Bill 518 requires signed parental consent for students to join any public school gay-straight alliance or similar organization or club. You can't go to your GSA anymore without signed parental consent beforehand. The same bill, professed to be a bill about upholding parental rights, says that a parent must give written permission before a teacher goes to use pronouns that do not align with the child's sex, but then goes on to say that a teacher may not be compelled to use pronouns that do not align with the child's sex, even with parental permission. So you have to have the parental permission, but even if you have the parental permission, the teachers can't be expected to do this thing. Parental rights. These laws paint a distressing picture of a society where the possibility of being gay or trans is no longer speakable. It feels impossible. They're trying to close a Pandora's box of self-knowledge that is not going to be shut. But there is real and immediate impacts to the kids living in these districts who are put in the middle of the struggle to remove representation and inclusion. We must actively challenge and advocate against these laws, working towards a society that embraces the whole of our society. I'm going to stop in just a second here. I am going to say that in a little bit, we're going to hear a picture book. It's not going to be read by me. We have other people reading. Y'all, you're welcome. That book would not be readable in half these states, right? So we're going to see the book. We're going to think about the book. We're going to know that these are also only the laws that have to do with LGBTQIA plus inclusion. These aren't even the ones talking about like history, right? These aren't even the ones talking about like social emotional learning. These are just the ones that the ACLU currently has passed. Yeah, okay. This is the part where I typically encourage you to reach out and contact your legislators. And your elected representatives play a vital role in shaping policy and making decisions that impact your community, and they do absolutely need to hear your voice. But also, donate to the ACLU. Tell everybody you know that this is happening. You officially have a conversation for Tuesday. Sorry. And check on your teachers. Check on your teachers, because they are struggling. All right. Happy 4th of July. The interlude